Hi everyone, welcome back. It's my Swedish whiskey girl, and today we're here with the Balvenie Peat Week. It's a 14-year-old, it's bottled at 48.3% ABV, and normally Balvenie of course makes an unpeated style of whiskey, but 1 week a year, the Peat Week, they do experiment with burning peat. And it was after Ian Miller, who was a distillery manager, he travelled to Islay and kind of inspired by his visit, he wanted to install a peat burner at the distillery. And now of course it is a bit of a tradition, and it is nice to see peated whiskies from outside of Islay, because of course back in the day you would always use peat when you dried your barley, and everything tended to have a very smoky style. So it is interesting to see that some companies do bring in peat a few weeks a year to see why or what their whiskey becomes with a bit of influence. And of course this whiskey is part of their Stories series, and yeah, they have interesting whiskies coming from Balvenie. So let's start by having a little look on the nose. It's quite a sweet smoke. It's not overpowering, it just feels quite subtle and elegant. Maybe subtle isn't the word, because it all depends on how used you are to smoky whiskies. But it's almost like a springtime breeze, just when it's starting to go a little bit warmer, and that just kind of like comes by you, and you just get this elegant smoke that's quite sweet. It's quite a vanilla smoke, I would say, as well. Almost like a brown sugar vanilla smoke. A little bit citrusy, but more of a kind of citrusy fruitiness in a way, because a little bit of a twist of zestiness. Yeah, very interesting character. A bit of the smoke at the very back almost reminds me of a Campbelltown smoke, but something that is very lightly peated Campbelltown. I was talking about Campbelltown smoke when I reviewed the Lamorique, which was more briny and dark. This just has a touch of that slight briny note very far back on the aroma kind of experience. But let's have a little taste. Sláinte Skål. I always experience Balvenie as quite oaky. Like it has an oaky flavour, which I think is a reason that so many like it, because it is, to a lot of people, I think a very classic Scotch. And I think this oaky influence is probably a big part of it. I would say if I were to describe Balvenie's whiskey with one word, I would probably choose woody or oaky, because that's the dominant flavour that I'm getting. And on this as well, it reminds me of the 12, but with a touch of elegant smoke. And the smoke is very well entwined with the oakiness, so they don't feel like two separate things. It just feels like the oakiness is smoky. So it has a vanilla sweetness. When I kind of taste the finish, it has a slight vegetal note to it. Do you know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of VALBORG, which is like when you just go into May, so on the last day of April, you have VALBORG, which is when you have basically a bonfire night to kind of, yeah, you just light big fires and people go there and watch it, and you stand there and it gets dark and you're a little bit chilly, but you maybe have something to drink or something to eat. And because this tastes a bit like that kind of springtime, vegetal, smoky, vanilla, everything come together, so it feels like a VALBORG smoke to it. Don't know if that makes sense. It's Yeah, like bonfire night, I would say. It might just be that I'm missing Sweden a lot at the moment because I've not been there since February. Hopefully I'll be able to go soon. But yeah, that oakiness feels a lot like bonfire nights, like springtime bonfire night to me. I would say the oakiness is still the dominant thing I'm getting, and the smoke is just a part of the oakiness. And it's a bonfire smoke, quite dry, but in a way that the smoke is light, and not that the smoke feels... It doesn't make my mouth feel dry, but the smoke feels like it's quite light and quite like you have a bonfire night and the material you used to make the fire is dry. Does that make sense? Sometimes I just talk and I'm like, it makes perfect sense in my brain, and then I realize people can't read my thoughts, so I'm trying to explain it the best I can. But it's a very classic Scotch. I think when a lot of people say that something tastes like whiskey, I think this is what a lot of people have in mind. Because it's classic, it's traditional. I think the peat just makes it a little bit more... I don't know, it's just... It's another experience, but it's almost like they're identical. The 12 and this 14, but that the smoke is out. I of course haven't tried this right next to the 12, but in my head, the memory I have of the 12 would be that this is just that with a touch of smoke to it. So it's very much a Balvenie character, but with that smoke that makes it, the character a little bit different, but not that different. So maybe if you like Balvenie and you're not used to smoky whiskies, maybe this would be something that you're familiar with, but that adds another layer that will still make you feel quite safe with what you're tasting, but will challenge you a little bit. It's a lovely whiskey. I think I know what I'm drinking next to VALBORG, and it's, yeah, a very pleasant classic whiskey. If you're just looking for something nice to sip, it's not very challenging, I wouldn't say. It's yeah, just quite enjoyable. Yeah. I would also say, because sometimes when you have a peated Speyside, it's very much a super fruity with a touch of smoke, which also is really lovely. But this has very much the Balvenie oaky character and then the smoke, which makes it very unique, I would say. But it's if you like oak and smoke, here's your whiskey. But I would love to hear what you think. Do you like Balvenie whiskey? Do you like the Week of Peat, this 14-year-old that I have here, that I really like? This classic Speyside peat. I would of course love to hear your thoughts. And if you like what I'm doing here on YouTube and my other social channels, I would be absolutely thrilled if you would consider using my affiliate links with either Master Malt, the Whisky Exchange or the Scotch Malt Whisky Society next time you're shopping with them. All the information is of course in the description here below, as well as links to my website, my Patreon, my Teespring shop and my Instagram if you're curious about that. As always, a massive thank you to my wonderful supporters on Patreon. I'm so grateful you want to continue to support me on my whiskey journey. And of course, please consider liking this video if you've enjoyed it and subscribing if you haven't already. I hope you've had an absolutely wonderful day. Sláinte Skål.